My next speaker is Olivier Charmeil. He's the head of Sanofi Pasteur. He is also part of the senior executive leadership of Sanofi. So he obviously has a view as the second P in the PPP. Sanofi is obviously one of the largest, Sanofi Pasteur rather, is one of the largest vaccine makers in the world. And Olivier, as well as being EVP now for vaccines at Sanofi and a member of the executive committee, he joined the original Sanofi more than 20 years ago as head of business development. He's held a succession of senior management posts in Sanofi, Syntelabo, and then he steered the operational integration of Sanofi, Syntelabo, and Aventis, took responsibility for pharma operations in Asia Pac and Japan, took up his present post in 2011. So I think he's got a really top-level view of how the vaccine world plays out from the point of view of industry. Olivier, if you care to join me, please. So, you're the second P in this triumvirate of Ps. From your perspective, you're running a business, it needs to make a profit, you need to bring new products to the market, against this backdrop of emerging agents, insufficiently optimized existing products. The influenza, for example, is an ongoing problem. It's an ongoing challenge every year to get a good vaccine. So how does all that work? I mean, how do you deal with all those questions? I'm just going to move back a bit here. At the same time.
So in life, of course, there are always the optimistic and the pessimistic. And I would join Joris in saying that vaccines overall have been very successful. It has been a great contributor, of course, to medical, social, and economic development. It contributes to better health for individuals, and at the end of the day, it contributes also to a better world. There is no better healthcare investment than vaccine, and everyone knows it. It's obvious that if we step back and we look to what has been achieved in the last 30 or 40 years, it's impressive. Smallpox has been eradicated. There will be most probably in 2016 no polio wild virus. We know, of course, also that looking to mumps, rubella, pertussis, a lot of progress have been made. But on the other hand, we need to realize that there is still a long way to go. We know that there are a disease where unfortunately there are no vaccines. We know that for RSV, for HSV, we have been talking a little bit earlier about tuberculosis. We talked extensively about Zika as well. So definitely there is still a long way to go. What has changed in the last, I would say 5 to 10 years, is that, the old model of vaccines or pharmaceutical company where, you would have a research center, you would put the people from research a little bit far from everywhere in the woods so that they can be productive. No, I think this world has changed. This world has changed, and all stakeholders need to work together. It's, of course, academia. Academia is in charge of, creating some knowledge. And, of course, with the other stakeholders, we contribute to take this knowledge and to transfer it so that at the end of the day, it can be used by individuals. So science is far too complex. Technology is far too complex to be only at the scale of one entity. I think it's true for the academic world, but it's also true for corporate organizations.
Yeah. And in terms of your participation, is it through IMI you're particularly realizing that, or what other kind of vehicles?
I can tell you that a company like Sanofi Pasteur is involved in multiple partnerships. I would say that I spend much of my time more outside than inside, which is probably a difference from all my predecessors. We work, and we don't work on projects, with only one partner. I just take one example. We were very happy last week to see in the Philippines, the first immunization of a child with our dengue vaccines. And we started 20 years ago. And of course, here we have been working with academia, we have been working with biotech, We have been working with various stakeholders because we would have never been successful alone. So to be able to involve all those stakeholders, and it's not only one partner here, it's various partnerships, and this is definitely one of the recipes for the future.
And is that always, say, is it at the level of exploratory science, at the level of preclinical development of identified candidate vaccines, or clinical development of actual products? I mean, I know, say, looking at your pipeline, you've got, say, a C. diff in phase 3, you've got a TB vaccine in phase 2. How did they come about? Was there much partnership involved in those?
I think if we are looking to our pipeline, and just to take an example, I think in our pipeline there is hardly, one vaccine candidate that has been developed exclusively in-house. This reflects, of course, the importance of partnerships. Of course, they are important as the exploratory phase. What has changed probably a little bit, and I think dengue is definitely a good example, we have been working since the exploratory phase with various partners at the end of the day to improve the vaccine. So I think we should get away from this concept that it's just at the exploratory phase that there are partnerships. I think more and more there are partnerships always along the value chain. Some of you have mentioned the importance of regulatory. Regulatory is absolutely key. Regulatory is extremely strategic. And the more we can work upstream all together, the more it will be productive. Because the worst is, having worked 15 or 20 years on a vaccine candidate and realize that at phase 3, unfortunately, or when the product is about to be filed, that unfortunately, for whatever reason, it cannot be approved.
In terms of the needs of low-income countries, and one would obviously hope that the dengue vaccine is going to make a good impact in the endemic regions, but the point Rebecca was making, that even existing products that are available but not necessarily optimized for low-income countries because of, say, the storage requirements, delivery requirements. I'm not sure whether Sanofi Pasteur actually has a rotavirus vaccine. You probably, no, you don't? But anyway, it's a general point. and how central is that to your agenda? Because I know obviously you exist to make profits for your shareholders, that's your obligation. How then can you also deal with the sort of if you like, moral or ethical obligation to play an active role in efforts to promote global public health?
So, of course, for a company like Sanofi Pasteur, it's important, of course, to contribute to public health. And, of course, we have a couple of projects. You mentioned thermostability a little bit earlier. For us, of course, thermostability is important because it's a way for us to contribute to public health. We do it with different strategic partnerships. It's something that is high on our agenda. I believe on topics like that, it's really through technology that we will be able to make a difference. And here again, it's being able to articulate and to work together in order to design technology, for example, with regard to the example I was just taking, which is thermostability. So working together, to define new technology that will allow us to, at the end of the day, to better serve public health. I think the technology dimension is something that will allow us to move much faster and much more efficiently. We know that vaccines, by nature, as we deal with healthy people, is in some way has been a little bit risk adverse. I think through technology, there will be in the upcoming futures really things that will make things much more easier and much more efficient.
Okay. This is, if you like, an industry question, and I'm probably indulging myself now rather than necessarily sticking to the theme, but when one looks at the vaccine industry, it's always characterized as an oligopoly. There was maybe 5 big players, there's maybe now 4.5. I'm not quite sure how you characterize it. And obviously a bunch of smaller players, many of whom get absorbed through M&A eventually into the bigger companies. Do you think that that kind of, is there sufficient competition there? I've heard critiques, say, from people interested in universal vaccines, sorry, universal influenza vaccines, that the sort of existing status quo suits the big influenza manufacturers fine, and the barriers to entry are very, very high, because it takes obviously very, very honed manufacturing processes to be able to produce these vaccines at scale. And it's not in your interest to pursue a universal vaccine. And I know there have been efforts at various times. And having a universal vaccine would be obviously a major contribution to public health if it worked. What are your thoughts on the structure of the industry and specifically on the universal vaccine question?
So 2 or 3 comments. First comment, we are an industry that is very capital intensive. I can tell you, just to take an example of for Sanofi Pasteur, and for Sanofi, Sanofi Pasteur makes, to long story short, 20% or a little bit than 20% of the total sales of Sanofi. But in terms of investment, capex, it's more than 1/3, not to say 40%. So it shows, of course, how capital intensive is this industry. The second thing which is extremely important, and you have mentioned a little bit earlier, the issue of the supply shortage. There is definitely an issue in terms of human capital. There is a lack of human capital in biologics. Okay. I think it's true in the US, it's also true in Europe, and I think it's extremely important that all stakeholders contribute in order to make sure that in universities we have more and more people that goes into biologics. Today there is a reasonable part of the supply shortage that results in fact from the lack of human capital. And we know that unfortunately to form good biologic people doesn't happen overnight, and this takes a lot of time. So a roadmap needs to be put in place, and I think it's of course the responsibility of each and every country, but also we all together have a responsibility so that in Europe we are able to train more people, because if we don't do it, I'm just back from Korea and China, and I see here, I can tell you, huge progress. The last point that you mentioned about universal vaccine, I can tell you a company like us, of course, we are very present in flu, and I can tell you that, of course, at some point to be ready to come with the new flu vaccine is one of the top of our priority.
Mm-hmm. Including a universal vaccine. Yeah, great. Is that the work from Cambis and Walter Fears way back? Or
no, again here we have a series of different partners. No, dengue was coming from Cambis, and now nosocomial vaccines that could be licensed by the end of the decade, Clostridium difficile, came from Cambis.
Yeah, very good. Thank you very much.